If you stay until the very end of this story, you might never judge someone by their job title again, and you'll understand why one silent room changed dozens of lives forever. Red Heart, if stories like this move you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, because sometimes a single story can change the way we see the world. The invitation was never meant to be accepted. Inside the glass tower of Halvorsen Global, the annual executive gala was less of a celebration and more of a performance: tailored suits, expensive laughter, and conversations that sounded important but meant very little. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, waiters floated silently with trays of champagne, and the city lights stretched endlessly below the 58th floor. At the center of it all stood CEO Daniel Halvorsen, young, brilliant, and known for two things: building a billion-dollar empire and never taking anything seriously. "Best party of the year," one executive said, raising a glass. Daniel smirked. "Of course it is. I paid for it." Laughter followed, polished and practiced. Across the room, Daniel noticed the elevator panel near the ballroom doors flicker again. The building's lifts had been malfunctioning all week, slow, jerky, sometimes stopping between floors. It had become an annoyance, and a running joke. Right on cue, a man in a faded blue work shirt stepped in from the service corridor. Grease stained his sleeves. A tool bag hung from his shoulder. His boots were scuffed, his hair slightly unkempt, and his presence felt painfully out of place among silk gowns and tuxedos. It was the elevator mechanic. Daniel nudged his assistant. Perfect timing. The assistant leaned closer. "Security can escort him out if you want." No, Daniel said, eyes sparkling with mischief. "I've got a better idea." He walked straight up to the mechanic. "Hey," Daniel said loudly, drawing attention. "You're the guy fixing our elevators, right?" The mechanic nodded, slightly uncomfortable. "Yes, sir. Just checking the control panel outside." "Well," Daniel said with a grin, "since you're already here, why don't you join us tonight?" A few executives chuckled, thinking it was harmless sarcasm. The mechanic hesitated. "I don't think I'm dressed for this." Daniel waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. We value all contributors to the company." More laughter. "It wasn't kind." The mechanic looked around at the glittering room, clearly unsure. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," Daniel said. "Guest of honor." The phrase dripped with irony. After a long pause, the man gave a small nod. "All right. Thank you." Daniel expected him to leave awkwardly within minutes. But he didn't. The mechanic stepped fully into the ballroom, shoulders straight, expression calm. A waiter hesitated, unsure whether to offer him champagne. The mechanic simply took a glass of water instead. Whispers rippled across the room. Who invited him? Is this a stunt? Security should handle that. Daniel watched from a distance, amused. But something felt off. The man wasn't nervous anymore. He wasn't looking down. He wasn't apologizing for existing. He was just observing. As if he belonged there more than anyone else. Then the chairman of the board, an elderly man named Victor Langford, suddenly froze mid-conversation. His glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. The entire room went silent. Victor stared at the mechanic like he had seen a ghost. Is that you?" Victor whispered. Every head turned. The mechanic met his gaze. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them: recognition, history, pain. "Yes," the mechanic said quietly. "It's me." Victor's eyes filled with tears. Actual tears, from a man known for ruthless negotiations and icy composure. "My God," he breathed. "We thought you were dead." Daniel's smirk vanished. "What's going on?" he asked, suddenly uneasy. Victor didn't answer him. He walked slowly toward the mechanic, as if approaching something fragile. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor said, voice shaking, "you're looking at the man who saved this company, and my life, 23 years ago." A stunned murmur spread through the room. Daniel blinked. "Excuse me?" Victor turned to him. "Daniel, meet Thomas Rivera." The name meant nothing to most people there. But Victor continued. "Back when this company was nothing but a failing startup in a rented warehouse, there was a fire. Electrical fault. Middle of the night. I was inside, unconscious from smoke." He swallowed hard. "Thomas was the maintenance technician. He ran back into a burning building to pull me out." Gasps echoed softly. "He suffered severe burns. Lost everything. Medical bills destroyed him financially. And while I rebuilt the company, he disappeared." Victor's voice cracked. "I searched for him for years." All eyes turned to Thomas. He stood quietly, hands folded, as if this attention made him uncomfortable. Daniel felt his stomach twist. You never told anyone?" Daniel asked. Thomas gave a small shrug. "Didn't seem important. I did my job." Victor shook his head fiercely. "You gave up your future for mine." Thomas smiled gently. "You gave a lot of people jobs. Looks like it worked out." The room felt unbearably heavy. Daniel suddenly remembered the grease stains. The worn boots. The calm dignity. He hadn't been looking at a joke. He'd been looking at a hero. Why are you fixing elevators?" someone asked softly. Thomas hesitated, then answered honestly. "After the fire, my hands never fully recovered. Couldn't do fine electrical engineering work anymore. So I took whatever jobs I could. Elevator maintenance pays the bills." No bitterness. No self-pity. Just truth. Victor wiped his eyes. "You should have been here all along. In this room. At this table." Thomas shook his head. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Daniel felt something inside him crack, something he didn't even realize was there. All his life he had believed success meant being at the top, surrounded by people who looked successful. But the bravest man in the room had walked in wearing a stained work shirt. Daniel stepped forward slowly. "I owe you an apology," he said, voice unsteady. "I invited you as a joke." Thomas looked at him, not angry, just tired. "I figured." The honesty hit harder than any insult. Daniel swallowed. "But I'm grateful you came anyway." Thomas nodded. "Me too." Daniel turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've been celebrating the wrong people tonight." He walked to the head table, picked up the microphone, and returned to Thomas. "This company exists because of this man," he said. "Not because of quarterly profits. Not because of leadership. Because someone chose courage over comfort." He paused, emotion thick in his voice. "Thomas Rivera, will you do us the honor of sitting at the head table?" For a moment, Thomas looked like he might refuse. Then Victor gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've earned it," the old man said. Slowly, Thomas nodded. As he walked across the ballroom, every executive stood. Not out of obligation, but respect. Some were crying. Others looked ashamed. Daniel felt both. Later that night, long after speeches and formalities ended, Daniel found Thomas alone on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Beautiful view," Daniel said quietly. Thomas smiled. "Yeah. Funny. I've worked in this building for months and never seen it from up here." Daniel leaned on the railing. "You could have asked." Thomas chuckled softly. "People don't usually invite the guy who fixes the elevators." Daniel winced. After a long silence, he said, "I want to change that." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "I want to start a foundation," Daniel continued. "For workers who get hurt on the job. Medical support, retraining, financial help. In your name." Thomas stared at him, stunned. You don't have to do that. I know, Daniel said. But I want to. He took a breath. You saved this company once. Let me help save others. Thomas looked back at the city, eyes glistening. All right, he said softly. But don't name it after me. Daniel smiled. Too late. They both laughed, not the polished laughter from earlier, but something real. Down below, elevators moved up and down the tower, carrying strangers past one another, each with stories no one else could see. And Daniel finally understood something simple and profound. You never know who's standing quietly in the corner of your life, carrying a story that could silence an entire room. So if this story touched your heart even a little, tap like red heart and subscribe bell, because sometimes the people we overlook today are the heroes we'll wish we had noticed tomorrow. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you step into an elevator, you'll look at the person holding the toolbox and see something more than a uniform. You'll see a human being. And that can change everything. Sparkles.